What's up, y'all? How you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Hope y'all had a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. Unfortunately, here in Missouri, we got a little bit of a snowfall, so I've been behind in making my videos. So, kind of an eventful Thanksgiving this year. We had a terrorist attack against 2 National Guardsmen, one of whom was killed, and the other is in serious condition. And wouldn't you know it was in Washington, D.C., and I know this doesn't really apply on the civilian side, but Washington, D.C. still has some of the strictest gun control restrictions in this entire country. The National Guardsmen in question were not armed. They were not allowed to be armed. Why, you might ask? Well, because the D.C. government said no. And usually, unless it's extreme situations, the National Guard isn't technically allowed to be armed if they're deployed on U.S. soil, unless it is I believe, a state of war, a state of insurrection, something along those lines, which I think this qualifies because they're there to, stop the rampant crime and, SA and other things I can't mention on YouTube, and which they have reduced by about 85% in every place they've gone, but I digress. This happened in Washington, D.C. Again, one of the biggest gun control utopias in the country. It was carried out by an Afghan national, former CIA asset, and current terrorist who I believe should be laid out on a slab, but unfortunately he's still drawing breath. He walked up to these 2 National Guardsmen with a .357 and gunned them down. He is not a U.S. citizen. He is not legally allowed to own a firearm. He was just recently granted asylum this past April. He is not legally allowed to own a firearm. It is Washington, D.C., where you're not legally allowed to carry a firearm. It is Washington, D.C., where you're not legally allowed to discharge a firearm. It is Washington, D.C., where there are no permits or self-defense really allowed in any capacity unless you are certain politicians from certain groups. So explain to me how this happened. But that's not the only thing that happened. Also in California, there was a shooting at a birthday party. Yes, a kid's birthday party. I believe this was probably gang-related. I haven't looked into it too much because, same old story. I believe at this point 11 people were injured and around 4 were killed, and please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. Yet again, California, gun control utopia. Semi-automatic weapons are effectively banned. Large capacity or standard capacity magazines are banned. Carrying a firearm is banned. There are almost no permits being issued, despite Bruen saying that you have to issue them. Yet this still happened. No one in this party was able to defend themselves. Neither one of those guardsmen were allowed to defend themselves. But yet these things still happen. Funny, it's almost as if gun control doesn't work. Who knew?